Afternoon, folks. Bear with me a second. I should be putting my theme tune on while I do this. I'll just make Facebook public. Right, we should get Facebook comments coming through now. I know that James was first in the door today, but I had to refresh my feed, so I lost it. I lost the first part of the chat. But afternoon, everybody. And Patricia, thank you very much for the super chat. And I will try and accommodate everybody with a rant as well as some news. Okay. So let's see who's in while we're waiting the Facebookers joining us. Well, as I say, James was in first. Hi, Eddie, Alistair, with Pet, Chris, Stephen, Margaret Noakes, Chris Fisher. Hi, Gingers. How are you over there in the States? Good morning to you. Was it yeah? Morning for yourself. Afternoon, Mark. Hugh. Jeanette. Afternoon to you. Hi, Andy Scott Brian. Stephen. Hi, Lauren. Hi, Joe Lefty Boater. Who else we got in? Hi, Ewan. Hi, Mark. Stuthers. Paul. Robert. And there we've got the Facebookers in there. Sandra. There's Marlon. Hi, Marlon. Graham. Mark Riddle. Greg Jack. Avril Lamb. Hi, Avril. Hi, George. We got William Weir. John Wardrobe. Right, we're up there, the 100 mark, folks, so let's get this broadcast underway. It's the two Davies on the 8th of the 2nd, 2024. And we're minus a Davy again, as you know, but we're going to be minus a Davy for a wee while because he's got his project in Birmingham, Bristol this week, and next week he's got an operation on his legs to try and sort his legs out. So there we go. So it'll be me for a while. So, as is normally the case when it's just me, this will be done in the style of Indie Truck TV. So let's get this broadcast underway. It's Indie Truck TV, out the truck and at home in his office, as he always is these days because I work in the evenings now. Where it is 3 degrees, snowing lightly, and that's your weather forecast for Salisbury, North Lanarkshire. And I see it's the same in Holytown, just down the road. Anyway, that's the weather forecast for Salisbury, North Lanarkshire. If you want to know what the weather's like where you are, look out your rain, bloody windy. Right, thanks, Stephen. Thank you very much. We'll get that out the door. Okie dokie. Right, let's go. What's first up in the agenda? First up in the agenda is BBC and IFS attack Scottish Government over health budget. Now, the BBC and the discredited think tank, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, says Finance Minister Shona Robertson is misleading the Scottish public on health spending. Miss Robertson announced a 1.3% increase in the health budget for 24-25. The IFS and the goons at the propaganda machine, who asked the discredited and disreputable Institute for Fiscal Studies to do the study. Anyway, the IFS is asked every year to attack the Scottish budget. As you know, it normally happens in March, but we're a wee bit early this year. Now, that's interesting. Right, so what's it all about? Well, it's all about the difference between core spending and additional spend. You're right enough, Stephen. Now, I don't know if you understand this, people, but when governments set their budget, they have a look at each department and they have a look at what the core cost for each department is. Now, every department has an overrun. They're not normally that big, but last year's overrun on the Scottish budget, NHS health budget, was 600 million quid. Now, there were a few factors involved in that, and that is increased energy costs, inflation, and of course, a settling industrial disputes with nurses and junior doctors and consultants, and that took the overspend to 600 million quid. Now, what the IFS and the BBC are trying to say is that this money should have been core spent. How was the Scottish Government in 22 supposed to predict how high inflation would get in 23? How was the Scottish Government in 22 supposed to predict how high energy costs were going to get in 2023? How could the Scottish Government have projected wage demand so high when the average wage demand over the last decade has been 2%? It wasn't to be expected. But what the IFS is doing is trying to say that because of the overspend last year, because of the unusual circumstances, that the 1.3% budget, which is core spend, has been miscalculated and is out by 600 million. And if you throw that 600 million in, then the NHS in Scotland is now receiving 0.7% less funding than before. But as I've just said, that's not how governments calculate their spend. The governments calculate their spends on predictions made on circumstances as they are in the year as they project forward. But things like the unusual high inflation go to 10.8%, with wage demands of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%. These are very unusual circumstances. Energy costs were unbelievable last year. They're coming down now. And of course, inflation is coming down now. So the overspend each year going forward should start to stabilise. But this story is a lie. And this is taking advantage of the fact that the people tend not to understand how government budgets are constructed. Now, as we know, all government departments tend to have an overspend. And that money for overspend generally comes out of what governments call contingency funds. Each department will have a contingency fund. In the case of the NHS last year, well, the Scottish Government actually had to raid its reserves because they were so unusual. But as I say, the story, and it's a big story at the moment, and it's Shona Robertson misleads public over health spend. No, she didn't. Let me make this quite clear again for those who don't understand how these things are done. Governments everywhere, not just in Scotland, but everywhere, including Westminster, they have a look at core costs for a department, and they cost that department's needs own core costs. Core costs are on the department: energy, stationery, computer equipment, staffing, all these things. These are core costs. Predictions are never right, and generally they're overspends. But core costs is what the budget owns. And the contingencies that are put in place for each department are there to cover any overrun. But they don't go to that department until it's needed. It's centrally held. So the forecast of an increase of 1.3% in next year's budget for the NHS is based on core costs and no own overruns, which there will be. There is always overruns. All right, so that's subject number one. And it is a false statement, folks. NHS funding will not go down by 0.7% this year, real terms, because overruns won't be as high. And the NHS budget, core budget, has went up by 1.3%. Okay. Right. Let's move on. You'll need to excuse me jumping a few pages. That's because Davies had missed a few pages and didn't realise it wasn't on the right page to start this report because it's a new pad. If it had been in the middle of the pad, I'd have noticed it. Anyway, let's move on. Scottish Government Minister Elena Whittam stands down from office due to ill health. Miss Whittam, who was appointed to her post as Drugs and Alcohol Minister in the Scottish Parliament in March 2023, is leaving, as I say, due to ill health. Miss Whittam said a series of events in her life in 2023 has led her to now suffer from PTSD. Now, I don't know what went on in her private life which has led to that. There's no mention of it in the report. But Miss Whitehouse says due to the illness, she can no longer commit 100% to her constituents and to the office of a Drugs and Alcohol Minister. Okay, now in her resignation letter, she states to the First Minister, Humza Yousaf, that her key concerns are her constituents who elected her, and that then we get the usual platitudes about it being an honour to serve. It's been the honour of my lifetime to serve within the Scottish Government. Mr. Yousaf wished her well in the future, but it looks like we will have a mini shuffle coming right up, because a wee bit later in the report we will get to the Health Minister standing down as well. Okay, so we wish Elena Whittam a speedy recovery, as did the First Minister. And we hope whatever traumatic series of events that happened in her life last year have calmed down and her life is much calmer going forward. So we wish her well. Right, let's move forward again. New polling data shows appetite for Indy up at 53%, and that the SNP has a 7% lead over the Labour Party in Scotland. Also, yesterday, the polling tracker by the British Polling Council says the SNP to take 3% of the vote UK-wide. Now, I had a wee look at this. Now, voting population UK-wide, couldn't get the exact figures for Scotland only. Because the figures that can vote in Scottish elections and Scottish council elections is far greater than can actually vote in general elections. For instance, there's about 4 million people in Scotland, believe it or not, out of 5.4 million, who can vote in council elections and the Scottish parliamentary elections. Why? Because European nationals get to vote. Immigrants that have been here for 6 months get to vote no matter where they came from. And 16 and 17-year-olds get to vote in Scottish council elections and Scottish parliament elections. Whereas only 18 and overs get to vote in the UK election. So the voting population in Scotland for the UK election is about 2.4 million. Now, I worked out that 3% of the voting population in the UK was about 1.35 million. Now, if that 1.35 million show up, because not all of the 2.4 million people who can vote in Scotland in the UK general election will vote in the general election in Scotland, turns out it's normally about 60%. Now, if we can get a majority of yes voters out and vote in the SNP, then the SNP will take 40 of the 53 seats, according to the seat tracker. They'll take 40 of the 53 seats, and that will give the SNP over 50% of the voting population. Now, or 50% of the population who vote, the population who vote, not the voting population, because not everybody shows up. As I say, it's normally between 54 and 60% here in Scotland for a general election. But as I say, that would give the SNP over 50% of those who turn out to vote. And that would be a clear expression of the will of the Scottish people. And all the Scottish people will be clear to Westminster, because it will be clear in the SNP manifesto, a vote for the SNP is a vote for independence. Will Westminster recognise that democratic vote and the will of the Scottish people? Well, if Sir Keir Starmer or Kid Starmer is to be believed, then the answer is no. And that means after a declaration from the First Minister saying that he wants the power, which will be knocked back, and that Westminster won't facilitate it, the First Minister has said that he will call a Scottish election and hold that as a plebiscite election. So we'll see what happens going forward. But we do have to keep the pressure on, folks. We have to keep our eyes on the prize. And we have to get out there and win hearts and minds. The other thing we have to do is get our kids of 18 plus into our cars and down to the bloody polling station. Also, make sure you have the relevant ID, because voter ID is necessary in this election. I keep saying this: if you don't have a driving licence, if you don't have a passport, if you don't have an acceptable form of ID, and you can get that list on the UK government website and the Scottish government website, then you must contact your council and get a voter's certificate. Now, this certificate says that you qualified to vote and you're who you are. It's issued free by your council. Alternatively, if you don't want to go with all that bother, you could always arrange a postal vote. And apart from the Scottish referendum, the postal vote systems actually work quite well. Okay, so at this point in time, if it's a May election, we'll probably win more than that 40 seats. If it's an October, sorry, if it's a May election, we'll probably win 40 seats. If it's November, as we're being told, then the physical checks on a plant and animal products coming in April, and of course the biometric checks for everybody travelling in and out of the UK and in and out of Europe coming in October. There will be food shortages. There'll be less shelf life on the food, and food prices will be through the roof. If it's a late election, then we'll probably take about 46 or 47 of these seats, because by that time the Scottish people will have suffered enough. So let's hope it's a November election. I've already covered why voting Labour in Scotland's a waste of time. Thank you, Sandra, but you're right. Okay, so that's the script at this point in time, even with what they're calling a 7-point lead. But it depends on which poll you believe. I mean, if you take the Ipsos Mori poll, the SNP have a 10-point lead over Labour. If you take the YouGov poll, it's a 7-point lead, and there's hundreds of polls, folks, hundreds of them. So the British Polling Foundation does something called a poll tracker, and consistently it shows the SNP taking 3% of the UK voting population in this circumstance. Now, 3% is a huge amount of votes in Scotland. They say it's about 1.35 million. Okay, let's move on. Right, we already heard about Elena Whitham resigning for ill health. Well, unfortunately, this one isn't a good news story, because Michael Matheson, the health minister, has resigned. Now, he's resigned as the parliamentary inquiry into his son running up an £11,000 bill on a government iPad while he was on holiday investigation begins. Now, as we know, David and I called for him to resign when this story broke. Now, the reason why he was kept in place, I don't know if you know this, but he was working out a cancer strategy for Scotland going forward over the next 10 years. So he was kept in post till that work was done. Now he's finished that work, he's resigned. But it doesn't matter, he should have resigned when this story started. And for a start, he should never have given his son the iPad in the first place. Alright, I need a bigger candle. I've got a bigger candle there than a naughty step will burn down me. He should have resigned in the first place. He should never have given a government device to his son in the first place. And the other reason why he ended up with an £11,000 bill was the IT department came to him and fitted his new SIM card for his phone and told him to bring his iPad along to the IT department to get done, and he didn't. So the iPad was still on the tar. It was on a there was no roaming exemption on his pad with the SIM card that was in it. And the terms and conditions of the previous contract had run out. So everything was getting paid at a massive rate. So he lied about his son using it. He said it was constituency work. Turned out not to be the case. He should have resigned then. And I say, First Ministers would have been all about this today. No doubt. So Mr. Matheson is now facing a parliamentary inquiry into his overspend. There isn't any need for it. It's a waste of parliamentary time. The IT department have already identified that his sons were watching football on it, and that's how they racked up an £11,000 bill. Mr. Matheson might not like it, but his stupidity in not doing what he was told and taking his iPad along to get a new SIM card fitted and its program updated, and giving the son the iPad in the first place, has led to him being £11,000 out of pocket. And it serves him right. The other reason why he should have resigned right away is he tried to build a public for it. Now, people say I don't criticise the SNP. I do, and I criticise them when they're in the rank. Whom should have demanded he stood down when this story broke. And Matheson should have said, right, I'll continue the work, but I'll stand down the now. He could have carried on working with the new health minister on that 10-year strategy. Thanks, Geordie. Thanks very much. Okay, the food banks are going to get a whacking this time. They got a whacking good some of you guys this time. Alright, so Matheson's gone. And of course there'll be a hoo-ha about it in the way. Parliamentary time wasted on an inquiry that's not required, but hey ho. He will be a loss. He's brought waiting times down. He negotiated, in fact he did really well. He negotiated the settlement with the nurses and with the junior doctors and consultants. And that's why we haven't had any strikes here in NHS Scotland. But there have been strikes in NHS England, costing the health service in England an additional £1 billion. Well, if Westminster's spending an additional £1 billion on the health service down that road, then the Scottish NHS should be receiving £110 million in consequentials. We'll see if that filters through or not. Right. Story number 5. This one's quite a good one, actually. It's been carried out in social media and on X. And that is that the SNP have been accused of showing disrespect to the monarchy as King Charles is diagnosed with cancer. Now, anybody watched Prime Minister's questions yesterday, and I did, we'll get to that. Anybody watched Prime Minister's questions yesterday would have seen the Labour leader speak about His Majesty, the King. You would have heard the opposition leader, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, refer to His Majesty the King. And when it go to Stephen Flynn, he dropped the Majesty crap and just said, wish King Charles the best. So this seems to be the stooshy, that ministers in Scotland are being disrespectful by not saying His Majesty the King. That is a distraction. We will always bucket, you're right, it is a distraction, but I'm going to cover it anyway because I like a wee rant. So, the Scottish ministers are not putting in the Majesty bit, right? Now, it could be to do with constitutional arrangements, but he's no the King of Scotland. You know. And if you don't understand that for people outside Scotland, just have a look. In Scotland, the people are sovereign. In England, Charlie's sovereign. And in England, Charlie owns everything. And he lends his sovereignty to Parliament so the Parliament can claim to be sovereign when it's no. But here in Scotland, he holds no such position. And you'll have noticed that at his coronation when he got all huffy when he had to sign the Claim of Right. So, that's just douchey. Apparently, the Scottish ministers are being disrespectful for no calling him His Majesty. He's no. There's nothing majestic about him. Or his family. If we go back to how Lizzie's dad came to the throne, that was because his brother advocated for marrying a both senior actress. Fast forward to now, and on the throne we have an adulterer, a liar, a cheat. No. Yeah, he was allowed to take the throne. There is no standards there. And of course, we can have a look at his brother, arms dealer, and paedophile Andrew. Or his sister, Anne, an adulteress and divorcee. And then, of course, Edward's a non-entity. Nobody knows very much about him. He's that far away from the throne. He gets to keep his bloody heat down. So there's nothing majestic about the family at all. In fact, you get right down to it. They're the biggest benefit scourgers in the UK. They're also the wealthiest landowners, so they don't need to be benefit scourgers. They don't need our money. But they claim their benefits year in, year out anyway for themselves and their civil list. Bunch of benefit scourgers, but there's nothing majestic about them. Not a single thing. As I say, Charles, liar, cheat, adulteress, they're married. They're married to divorced and married to divorcee. Andrew flew about the world abusing wee girls apparently, while selling arms on behalf of the UK state. And Anne, of course, fair, divorce, remarried, or no remarried, don't bloody well know, don't pay that much attention to buggers. There's nothing majestic about them. And I would never call them bloody majesty. They're just a bunch of benefit scoundrels of the highest order who don't need public money, but take it anyway. And claim rights over us, which just aren't natural in this century. They're a throwback to the bloody Dark Ages. Anyway, how did the kings of the past and kings take up such positions of power within our societies? Well, they stole off the poor, surrounded themselves by sycophants, and then started ruling over us. Everything that they own, the Duchy of Cornwall, huge swathes of Scotland, all that sort of shit, it was never theirs. They stole it and surrounded themselves with sycophants. There's nothing majestic about them. Nothing. And it's an institution, an organisation which should be condemned to the bin. I think we used to call it Room 101. Right, let's move on and go down this road to the House of Thieves and Carpetbaggers. For those outside Scotland, that's Westminster. And the House of Thieves of Smelly Old Has-Beens and Soofers, which is the House of Lords. And for people out with Scotland that doesn't know what Soofers are, it's a Scottish term for drunkard. So the House of Lords is a place for the put has-been politicians who are generally drunkards. Right, let's move on. So Tuesday sees the comedy character Liz Truss and her backers from Tufton Street launch another splinter group within the Conservative Party. Anyway, I've lost track of how many splinter groups there is now, but I'll name a couple of them. There's the New Conservatives, there's the Christian Conservatives, there's the Blue Wall Conservative group, there's the Brexit Gang, and now this new group is called Popcorn, Popular Conservatism. Now, I watched some of the comedy that was going on during this speech. People like Nigel Farage and Jacob Rees-Mogg were there, you know, some of the nicest people on the planet. Anyway, I listened to what Liz Truss had to say, and by the way, it was laborious. You can thank me for doing it on your behalf. She tells us that the reason for this new group within the Conservative Party is to re-evaluate Conservative values. Now, why has this group sprung up? Well, I covered this in a short yesterday, where I spoke about Keir Starmer moving the Labour Party into right of centre, into the ground vacated by the Tories as they get taken over by the lunatic Brexiteers who moved them to the right towards fascism. All right? And that's where we've seen all these draconian laws. The strike laws, the anti-strike laws, the anti-protest laws. And I hear that the Tories are going to put in their manifesto for the next election that they're going to scrap ECHA, the European Court on Human Rights. Once they do that, folks, all our fucking rights are out the window. There'll be no human rights. That's if they win. But the Labour Party are on the march to right and all. By the end of that next Parliament, Starmer might well be at that position. And if he knocks back the outcome of the election here in Scotland, then he'll already be operating as an imperial master and a dictator as far as this segment of the union is concerned. Because he'll be another democracy denier. But anyway, the reason for this think tank is to try and look at core Conservative values, the ones that Starmer have stolen. Well, Starmer stole their clothes. Same thing happened here. Is the Labour Party in Scotland tracked right? The SNP tracked left. Well, as the Tory Party in England has tracked further and further to the right towards fascism, Labour stole their clothes and jumped into the right of centre. I explained the evolution of that yesterday in a video about how Starmer lied to Momentum, which was the biggest, to the Labour Party with Momentum of 300,000 members, the biggest party in Europe. He lied to them. He put on Jeremy Corbyn's clothes and lied to them in 10 pledges, and then shed Jeremy Corbyn's clothes and picked up the right of centre clothes abandoned by the Tories as they tracked to the extreme right. All right. Now, you see, this new think tank called the Popcorns is there, as I say, to try and reevaluate the central Tory values and try and track back to the left, to get back to the centre, to win back those voters who are now going to vote Labour, who are now wearing Tory clothes. And that's why Starmer's purging the left, because he doesn't need them anymore. He's got traditional Tories to vote for him now. Why has he got traditional Tories to vote for him? Well, because he's a traditional Tory himself. He's told us that. So what are traditional Tory values that Liz Truss was talking about? Good economic management. In my recollection of the last amount of period of time I've been alive, the Tories have now been good at managing the economy. Good environmental standards and looking after the countryside. This particular incarnation of the Tory party has filled the rivers and the seas in England full of shite. And they've abandoned their usual husbandry of the ecology. of the countryside. You know. So they were the two core Tory values that Liz Truss was actually talking about. And this is where we keep getting this Labour can't be trusted on the economy. Look at the Tories. It shows us, history shows us that Tories manage the economy for themselves. And those and such as those. And we the people have never benefited from a Conservative government. Whereas we look at Labour government, on the other hand, they've managed the economy better, but no well. But this new incarnation of Labour will take on what used to be the Tories. Well, won't take on, they are what used to be the Tories. And they claim to be the ones who are exuding those values to the public, good economic management and good husbandry of the countryside. Oh, bollocks, of course. But anyway, that's why Liz Truss and the loony Tufton Street Bampots have started the pop con. And believe me, it's a con, all right. It's just another way that Liz Truss and some goons can take money and keep themselves in the public eye. I wonder how much of Tufton Street's loon balls paid her for that on Tuesday. But hey, the real Tory values are actually self-interest and corruption. And that's where Starmer is, by the way. Self-interest and corruption. Right, let's move on. There was a stooshy, or there is a stooshy, over Rishi Sunak's performance at a Prime Minister's Questions yesterday. Okay. Now this has to do with Mr. Starmer's first question. And his first question to Sunak was on how crass it was to take £1,000 bet for the vile creature that is Piers Morgan, that he would get the Rwanda flights after Grun. Well, to Rishi Sunak, £1,000 like a penny, you and me. Anyway, in his reply to Starmer, Sunak said that Starmer was Mr. Flip-Flop. And he went on to ring off some of the 10 pledges that Starmer flip-flopped on. But he ended on, and Starmer even flip-flopped on what is a woman, or the definition of a woman. Now, as we know, this is a dog whistle to the transphobic. But imagine, Dana, when the mother of a teenager who was murdered in a park in the northeast of England, I think it was the northeast of England, was in the gallery. Can you imagine that? Every woman's there to watch proceedings. Probably invited Sunak, Starmer actually, but beside the point, she's there to watch proceedings. He must have known she was there. You don't throw out dog whistles to the anti-trans mob when the mother of a murdered trans child is in the bloody gallery. Woof. But Sunak was right. Starmer can't be trusted. Starmer was right. Sunak can't be trusted either. Thanks, Bob. The World Economic Forum, we'll put this one up because we never know. Let's have a wee look, see if anybody agrees with Bob. You can let them know. Hey, the World Economic Forum run the world. Neil Oliver calls it out. Oh, he's another fucking loony. But you're right about we're having the least qualified governments and the most unscrupulous citizens. This is what we're up against, people of the world. Well, the World Economic Forum obviously has an input in the world, that's for sure. Anyway, thanks very much for the kind donation, Bob. Thank you. So, as I say, there's a stooshy going on, and rightly so. The behaviour of Sunak yesterday was unbecoming of the office he holds. No, I've got any respect for the office he holds. As far as I'm concerned, that's a foreign parliament, a foreign land, and we have no business being there. Be wary of World Economic Forum, Davy. Aye, I'll be wary of World Economic Forum. Of course I'm aware of World Bucket. As if they've ever heard of the two Davies. Huh? Mental. Hey, anyway, so that's it. That's the stooshy of our Prime Ministers. So is. How did I get the number? Right. As I say, but baited these guys. I mean, I said this. Starmer was a statesman put in place to steal the Labour Party for those in the state who hold power, privilege, and patronage to the state. Right, let's move on and stay with Starmer. On the very day, we can hear this one. On the very day that the European climate scientists tells us that last year seen the climate temperature rise by 1.5 degrees over a whole 12-month period for the first time ever. Remember, this is 1.5 degrees higher than post pre-industrialization things. All right. Now, as we know, that's going to lead to the breakdown of ecosystems if that continues. The temperature is that high. And we'll see huge shifts in the weather patterns worldwide. The temperature stays that high. All right, but on the very, very day that we are being told that the 50 years we had to get this under control has been reduced to 25. And bear in mind, I started reporting on this 6 years ago. So we were down to 44 years. And in the space of 12 months, we've now got 25 years to sort this out and get it under before we face an ecological disaster. On that very day, Keir Starmer announces he's ditching the last pledge that he had made to the Labour Party in order to steal the Labour Party on behalf of power, privilege and patronage of the state. He tells us he's going to scrap it. The 28 billion a year that he was going to plough in to the green economy to supercharge the green economy and into green energy to bring down energy prices and make energy more sustainable and make us less reliant on energy from elsewhere. So on the very day that the EU climate scientists announced that over the last 12 months, the temperature has been 1.5 degrees higher consistently than what we were pre-industrialization. And we know that when it gets to 2 degrees higher than pre-industrialization, we are going to see an ecological breakdown of the planet's biosystems and habitats. This idiot decides to back down. Now, why is he back down? Well, I covered this yesterday as well. The Labour Party are no longer the party of the people. They are no longer the party of the worker. They are the party of the middle. They no longer rely on subscriptions from members of trade unions and members of the Labour Party. They now rely on money for big corporations and for the banks in the form of donations. That's where Starmer's been taking them. They are now a carbon copy of the funding system that the Tories have in place. Well, that means no upsetting the oil and gas giants. Who will no doubt be ploughing money into the Labour Party now that they've become the Tory party. And as the Tory party implodes, and Labour become the Red Tories, and that suits business because he's going to accommodate business. He says he's no longer the party of the people, the party of the worker. He is now a party of the strivers and the achievers. We're a small America, Paul. You're right. We are beginning to start looking like America. Really starting to look like America. On the day that the EU tells us that an ecological disaster worldwide is imminent, and that we don't have 44 years left to sort it, we've got 25, Starmer bins his pledge. No doubt because of pressure from his backers. Mental. Okay, let's move on. State pensions. State pension age to rise to 71 by 2050, says pension experts at the ILC. Now, the ILC is a, what are they called again? International Law Commission. All right. The ILC's David Sinclair states that by 2050 we will have twice as many over 65s, but the amount of people of working age will only have gone up by a fifth. So the amount of working age people in the UK by 2050 will only went up by 20%, whereas the amount of over 65s will have went up by 50%. Okay. Now, Mr. Sinclair, who is the Chief Executive of the International Law Commission, said governments need to have an honest discussion on the subject, but they're no. Now, what he's saying is governments have options. They could raise the state pension, they can cut the state pension, they can get rid of the state pension, but they're going to have, or they can raise the pension age to a point where, you work till you die. Now, what he's saying is that they have to have a conversation about this. It's through the day. But do I think the International Law Commission, who were commissioned, by the way, by the House of Lords to look at this, I don't know it, just so you know, I don't believe that they're right. I don't think they're right at all. There will definitely not be that amount of pensioners, 50% more pensioners, by 2050. And I can tell you that for a fact. How do you know that? The amount they're dying each year because of failing healthcare systems. And they are failing. Especially in England and Wales. We're just about holding we're in. But our system will fail, and as they defund that system down the road, as long as we're in this bloody union and don't have control over any finances, then the same thing will happen here. So, and when they do move to a private healthcare system down that road, then many more will die quickly because they won't be able to afford their health. People down that road are already dying because of prescription charges. The choice between taking your medicine and eating the heat. So, I don't know where they're getting their figures from. But I just don't see it. And the other thing, the reason why I don't think that would be the case is because of especially when it comes to working age population, because as we know, we're facing we're facing a climate crisis. People will be on the march, and we are going to have to accommodate them. So inward migration will go up. The interesting thing about the people who will be on the move is they'll all be young, fit, and of working age. The older populations in these places, they'll just stay there and die. That's generally how it works. So I think this a study commissioned by the House of Lords is going to orang. And I don't think there's any need for the pension age to get any higher than it is at the moment. You're late, Alexis. Thanks very much for the super chat. But you know where you're going. Naughty step. Don't burn your arse on the candle. Don't be late again. Right, so I really don't think they've got this one right, folks. We've just spoke about the climate crisis, which is now only 25 years away. People are going to be on the move much faster than we expected. So now I think that's a lot of bollocks. Right. And we're going to end on a Scottish story. Right now, the NFU is going to have a look at 71 supermarkets and 7 regions in Scotland and have a look at how Scottish goods are being placed and marketed. And they're going to have a look at all the big supermarkets. That is Sainsbury's, Marks and Spencer's, Asda, Tesco, Morrison's, the Co-op, Aldi's and Lidl, and they're going to look at how they display Scottish goods, brand Scottish goods, Bob, you're off your head, but I'm going to hear this one just because we like a loony now and again. Apparently Neil Oliver for First Minister, he's a unionist, Bob. We won't have another unionist First Minister in Scotland. Bampot. Hey, no you, Neil Oliver. Although I don't know, Bob, you might be a unionist or not. Where was it? Aye, and they're going to have a look at how these things are branded and how they're displayed. Now we know in the future how they will be branded. We've been told in the Internal Market Bill they'll all be branded as British, and we see that more and more in our supermarkets here. Aldi's and Lidl's is getting as bad as everywhere else. Almost everything's wrapped in a butcher's apron, and then it'll tell you county of origin, and it'll maybe say Angus. It won't say Angus Scotland, it'll just say Angus. Or it'll say Dumfries and Galloway, or it'll say Lanarkshire, it'll say Highlands and Islands, but it'll all be wrapped as British. Scotland, the brand, is to be done away with, as you know. Neil Gray's been promoted to Health Secretary, is he, Stephen? I'll give him a wee bell and congratulate him. I'll leave him a text, actually, be busy. Anyway, what they're going to find is, as I say, the NFU Scotland, is they're going to find that Scottish brands are all being branded as British brands. So, will they put pressure on to save Scotland, the brand? I hope so. Right, now I want to end on an NHS story that's personal to me. I'm going to do something that I don't normally do. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not ending on that. After I've said my piece here, I'm going to put up a couple of videos, short videos for you to get an idea of how corrupt the House of Thieves and Carpetbaggers is. As you know, I follow the Good Law Project, so there'll be a couple of videos I'm going to put up to end the programme. But right now, I'd like to give my thanks to NHS Lanarkshire and NHS Scotland, who, as you know, I have consistently praised, folks, because of the exemplary service that Sarah and I get from the NHS. We don't have any waiting time for a doctor. Pick up a phone, need to see a doctor, no bother, come and see the doctor either same day or next day. Referrals on for investigation into health problems have been phenomenal. As you know, Sarah got whipped in for tests for cancer during the pandemic crisis whenever it was closed. But once again, 7 weeks ago, Sarah picked up the phone to the doctor. She wasn't feeling well. Needed an appointment to see the doctor. Come in the day. Same day appointment. Referred to NHS Lanarkshire University Hospitals for chest problems. Alright? Now, the waiting time in Scotland is projected to be, the legal waiting time, no longer, you should wait no longer than 16 weeks. Sarah had her first appointment today to look into it for an investigation into her chest problems, so that's only 7 weeks. From seen the GP. Mind she got the GP appointment the same day to being fitted in to start the investigation into her chest problems today and next week. She had the blow into the tube thing today to measure her lung strength, and next week she's going to Hermeyer's for a chest scan. Absolutely amazing service. NHS Lanarkshire, I don't know what's happening elsewhere in Scotland, but NHS Lanarkshire are doing phenomenally. And the reason why I'm extending that gratefulness to the whole of the NHS is, you know, David's going through some health problems and all. 8 weeks ago, he referred himself to his doctor. His doctor says, we'll put you on the waiting list to see an NHS specialist. And he was told to expect a 16 to 24-week wait. David decided, no, I'm not waiting, I'm going private. He went and seen a private specialist in the area. The private specialist in the area said, you don't need to wait that long in the NHS, you don't need to pay us. Wrote a letter from the private specialist to the NHS. 2 weeks later, David's getting sorted out with an appointment. 8 weeks in, David's gone for an operation on the NHS to get the situation resolved, hopefully. Question we've got to ask ourselves is, where is this bloody long waiting list I'm talking about? Where are they? I mean, the service here in North Lanarkshire is phenomenal. The service David's just got in Greater Glasgow and Clyde Health Board is phenomenal. Where are these bloody waiting lists these politicians are shouting about? And I'm seeing in the comments here that the same thing all over bloody Scotland. Where are these year-long waiting lists? Where are these long waits? I'll tell you one better than that. During the period of Sarah going to her doctor and getting her first consultation today, while she was there, she'd already been seen by a physiotherapist for a hand injury. But it's still not right. So she thought, well, I'm in the Milkmans and that's where the physiotherapy department is. I'll pop along and see if I can get an appointment. Mind, if you phone up for a physiotherapy appointment, you're still 16 weeks waiting time. So we're in the hospital, Sarah pops in to physiotherapy reception, tells them what her name is, what the problem is. Aye, here's your appointment. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Just rocked up because she was in the hospital. Come and see us in 2 weeks. You can't beat that. A phenomenal service. So, as I say, the NHS in Scotland don't get praised enough for the outstanding work they do. DJ, your son's in Yorkshire and he says 3 weeks for a doctor's appointment. Tell me to come home. Mental. As I say, the NHS in Scotland don't get the praise that they're due. Well, I'll give them it. I think it's a wonderful service. It's been very good for Sarah and I. Okay, now, as you know, as I say, I follow the Good Law Project. And I want to, what they're doing is they're running something called the VIP files at the moment. And it highlights all the corruption that's went on during the pandemic. And she's highlighted that 10 billion quid has been stolen by Tory backers and Tory donors. So I'm going to stick a couple of these videos up for you to see. I'll start at the bottom. They're no long. They're only a couple of minutes each. So let's get this one up big. Oh, what a one by that. I'll stop it and I'll share it to you. Okay, let's have a look at this one. Shut down the state pension thing. Where's the share button? There it's there. We'll start up by sharing this one. No, yeah, no more. Okay. Now, if you haven't seen these videos, folks, you're going to excuse that. We're almost at the end of the advert. If you haven't seen these videos, they're worth watching. This one's 2 minutes and 58 seconds long.
£100 million contract, unusable medical supplies, a National Crime Agency raid, a legal battle and a belated admission. The infamous PPE MedPro, set up for the benefit of Tory peer Michelle Mone's husband and their family. In October 2020, Good Law Project revealed the £100 Box Fresh company had received contracts worth £200 million, just 7 weeks after it was set up. The company found its way onto the VIP lane after being referred by none other than Mone herself. In spite of threatening anybody who wrote about the story via her lawyers and claiming she had no involvement with the company, a Freedom of Information request by Good Law in 2021 revealed she had introduced the company to Minister Lord Agnew and Michael Gove. Then, the National Crime Agency raided her home in April 2022 over suspected criminal offences in the procurement, and the government began a legal claim separately against the faulty gowns PPE MedPro provided. In November 2023, Mone and her husband finally admitted involvement with PPE MedPro, receiving £65 million in so-called profit from the deal. And no surprise here, the story is far from over. We're investigating more of these deals in the VIP files. Follow us and you will be the first to know.
That's the first one I wanted to show you folks, and of course that was Ramon. And hold on, I put up Bob's super chat, and we'll see what Bob's going to say. You love your country, you never state what country it is, but Bob, and you hate the bunch of degenerates running your country into the ground. I suppose you're talking about the Tory party in Westminster there. And then the day came when the risk to remain tightened. A bud was more painful, the risk to blossom. I don't know what that means, Bob, but thanks very much for the super chat. And please be distinctive when you're talking about the state and when you're talking about your country. Right, let's pop that one down and stick the next one up. These are quite interesting wee videos, folks. So we'll pop this one up and let you have a look at this one. This one's quite good. We'll just get by the ads. Right, here we go. We'll put this one up and share it. You're going to love these. These are brilliant. But as I say, I'm only going to show you a couple because time's getting on this start up shortly. Okay, is that up? Let's put it up. And here we go, the VIP files.
Biggest winner of VIP testing deals during the pandemic. Innova Medical Group, a US-based firm, somehow managed to snag 9 contracts for lateral flow tests worth a staggering £3.7 billion.
This one's a shocker, folks.
So how did this happen? After months of fighting for the true source of the referral to be published, Good Law Project uncovered emails back in February 2023 revealing that Dominic Cummings had referred Innova to the government's fast-track VIP. Charles Palmer and Kim Thonger approached Cummings on behalf of Innova in July 2020 via their company, Disruptive Nanotechnology, arguing that their test was a game changer. Within an hour of receiving the email from the 2 middlemen, Cummings had referred Innova to number 10. Palmer and Thonger's company had just £85 in the bank and were £3,500 in debt. After the deals, their profits surged to £20.5 million, with £18 million in the bank. Innova's tests were rejected by the US and questioned by UK experts due to quality. In fact, the FDA in the United States issued a recall of some of Innova's tests due to a risk of presenting false results. We're investigating more of these deals in the VIP files. Follow us and you'll be the first to know.
Isn't that interesting? Now, I had a wee look into this particular case, and the reason why the FDA had rejected these and even recalled some of these tests was because they tended to show a negative, a false negative. Absolutely mental. And I think we'll just do one for the road, folks. One for the road. Let's get this last one up. Put it into the studio, obviously. Hey, please, aye. Not one wheel. Not one wheel, I think it's this one. No, this one. Hey, here we go.
The numbers, and we can reveal that 7 companies which landed contracts worth more than a staggering £611 million through the VIP lane have shut up shop. More than half of this total was for equipment that was totally useless, £336 million worth. During the pandemic, the Tories set up the VIP lane, giving some companies priority access for massive contracts to supply PPE. 4 years later, 14% of those companies have stopped trading. One company, owned by a Tory councillor, bagged a VIP lane contract worth £276 million in 2020. At least £183 million worth of this PPE has been deemed unfit for NHS use. But the company went into liquidation in August 2023. Now these companies have folded, there's very little prospect that any of this wasted money can be recovered. But it's not too late to go after all the others. We're investigating more of these shady deals in the VIP files, so that the ministers who waved them through without due diligence can be held to account. Follow us and you will be the first to know.
So folks, go and subscribe to the Good Law Project's YouTube channel. Very interesting stuff. And I see somebody saying Bob's in the wrong channel. He's in the right channel. We're hoping to convert people, folks, and we're in an election year. We want as many of both sides of the great debate here in Scotland on the channel and in the comments, so that you can debate each other. Maybe persuade a few to come and join the cause. Now listen, I want to thank everybody for your kind donations today. And as I say, it's an election year. If you support independence, vote SNP, because that's the vote that will get us to our end game. If you're not of the independent mind yet, then we'll try our best to persuade you. Alright, so get your A game on, folks, for an election. Eyes on the prize. And you all know what the prize is. And let's hope David has a good outcome for his operation next week. Now, listen, I will be on before Monday. I tell you, I'm up in my game. I'll be picking a subject and I'll delve into that subject in depth for each of the broadcasts I'm going to put out, in addition to a normal 2-day-a-week schedule. Alright? As I say, look after yourselves, look after each other. Thanks for your kind donations. Eyes on the prize. And everybody's welcome.